Well, ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome once again to yet another episode of Ground Zero Everyday Leaders. It's episode number 3 of season 2, and I'm your host, Alan D'Souza, welcoming you once again to this very, very exciting and amazing evening. When I think about introducing the guest today, it reminds me of the quote by one of the motivational speakers and a leadership speaker, John Maxwell, who says leaders must be close enough to relate to others. Leaders must be close enough to relate to others, but far enough to motivate them. So it's a balance that John Maxwell is kind of quoting in this subject. He says, once again, I like to re-quote that. He says, leaders must be close enough to relate to others, but far enough to motivate them. And that is how I relate the gentleman or the guest we have today, Mr. C.V. Nagarajan, the Deputy CEO of Datco Tenant LLC, Dubai. And the reason I say that is I know Mr. Nagarajan is very close. I mean, he does all that is necessary to stay close to his colleagues and counterparts and whoever is around him. And yet he has that little distance maintained just to kind of help him motivate the others working under him. And I'm sure that is it. Even if Mr. Nagarajan disagrees, that's the personality I see from the other side if I have to introduce him. So, Mr. Nagarajan, with that short little introduction, I would like to welcome you to this show.
Thank you, Alan. What an excellent introduction, and makes me sort of feel very shy of the screen now to say that such a very powerful quote that you used on an ideal leader. Yeah, thank you for that.
No, I believe that absolutely fits into the personality that you are, sir, and we are honored to have you as our guest. So, sir, I mean, we speak about it, and then straight away I would like to dive into that question about leadership itself. And kind of probably ask you a question up front, which I've not done in other shows, is what makes you who you are today? I mean, I don't want to use the generic word role model, but let's put it in a different way. What is it that makes you who you are today?
Okay. Most of it is within yourself, in a sense. You have this inner drive. You look at, like you said, role models and say, okay, there's nobody perfect in all aspects of life at any given point of time. That people are all learning and growing all the time. So it's the inner drive that you see one, like for example, my dad, and I would say that self-discipline. So you learn and look up to him for that self-discipline. And if it was my patience and simplicity, I would look up to my mother. Unconditional love and service for humanity, you can say, I look up to my wife, who is very, very passionate about helping people emotionally. She works with the Art of Living as foundation, and she's a teacher too. And similarly, in terms of employment, I would say, yeah, there are so many role models. My first boss, and I normally don't use this term boss, the leader that I was working with had belief in me. I mean, that in itself, for all of us, somebody else has more belief in your abilities than yourself at that point of time. So this is the kind of inspiration that you get, which helps you to always aspire for a better quality of life, whether it's career or personal life, relationships, I would say. So that's what, and I'm all the time I'm keen about learning. So reading is something that I take up wherever. These days it's more online, and so a lot some time. It's for me, I find role models all over. Nothing particular one. It is not just one aspect. In each aspect, you would find somebody is so good at, and so that's how I get inspired to become that in that aspect.
Right. But in fact, it reminds me of our last guest, he kind of quoted as the situation or the circumstances also around you kind of acts as a role model. And I was really kind of impressed with that. And I'm sure the situation around you has also driven to where you are today, right from your days in Chennai and till this point, and leading one of the most recognized groups in the UAE, and in fact all around the world probably. And that's a journey, isn't it, sir?
True, absolutely. Can't agree more. I mean, this is something that situational leadership itself is a terminology these days, as a buzzword. And yes, we are all leaders in different situations, and we learn through those situations the way we handle that, the way we overcome those challenges, and maybe perhaps even sometimes allow others to overcome those challenges. So it's quite
well, I kind of picked up in the words that you mentioned earlier. You said learning is something that never stops, and you as well want to you have a desire to learn every day. And perhaps that's what drove you towards getting into an admission to a management school pretty much at a time when you're very much settled in your job. Not just settled, you're actually running the show, and yet you chose to study.
Yeah, true. Learning, you either grow or die. There is no standstill. You must have heard that kind of quotes that people have made. It's that kind of, even as I said, when I started a polytechnic education, and you feel you're not enough. I mean, for whatever reasons, there's nothing belittling the education, but it is just a feeling that, in a society, you said, oh, you need to be a graduate. So when I took up this job, I did my evening course learning for what's called as AMIE, the Institution of Engineers in Calcutta. They do a chartered engineers course. So that was also an evening learning while the work was going on with this company, Western Crompton, where I was in exports. So similarly, as time passed on, you learned what do you call that kind of learning was very much within me. Saying when even after like you said, having some managerial roles, team leadership roles, I thought it would be interesting to learn what's contemporary views on leadership. It was more on strategy, the kind of education that I took with Strathclyde in Glasgow University. But they had their classes here in British Council in Dubai. And so that was a evening class and weekend class. So it took quite a lot of commitment also. So that was something, again, as I said, one has to be disciplined if you want to learn. So you have to give it the time and effort to learn. And it came through more as my earlier leader used to say, Ian Mack, who was the CEO of the company, said, we benefited a lot out of that kind of classes that you attended, and the program that you went for meant a lot of benefit for the company in the way we changed the outlook of the company. So these are his words. So I'm proud that it came from a very important person that was running the company at that time.
No, absolutely, sir. And I think that very much goes down in line to the team that you lead as well. I mean, primarily, I'm sure you have a lot of energy spent on kind of strategically thinking about how to grow your team in terms of learning themselves. I mean, whether it comes in form of leadership courses or motivational courses. So how important do you suggest that training and or rather, learning and development is in the corporate world? I mean, what's the place? I mean, is it a part and parcel? Do you see it as a part and parcel, or do you see it as a kind of an attached, stream that has to walk along with the corporate world?
True. I mean, the question was, if I understand, saying how important is training and development. And needless to say, it's a no-brainer question, really. I'm sorry. I mean, no offense meant. What I'm saying is, cannot be a disagreement with that. I mean, if you want to grow, you have to learn.
Absolutely.
Even if it's learning from your mistakes, it's not about a program, a course that you attend. So learning is, all around from our life situations. We talked about situational leadership, from our own life situations to learning and formal learning. And these days there are podcasts and things like that. What you're doing now for your students, that where they inspire them to learn about relationship building and leadership. And there's absolutely no question about the place where learning belongs to. It's definitely a very, very important part of one's development, I must say. Yeah.
No, absolutely, sir. Well, let me now go back to the early days, Ms. Nagarajan. I mean, how did your early days kind of go? And if you can shed a little bit of light, because I always relate that to a person when he arrives at his later stage. And there is some sort of a link or a relationship I normally see. And I feel the early days plays a very important and a key role.
True. Background, or as we call it, where you come from. So that's definitely has a connection in how we think, how we relate to people. There's no doubt about it. I'm from a small family. In terms, when I say small, my dad, my mom, and my sister. I have an elder sister, which quite a inspirational person in terms of learning, speed of learning, and been always a challenge to catch up with her. And so it was always a comparison to say she was a class topper, school topper, and college topper, and all of that. It's quite challenging to be that. Mine was more. I was an average student in terms, if you want to use the gradation and ranks as the criteria in the class. And we were living in Chennai most of the time. My life has been, besides Dubai, I have lived all the time in Chennai. So we grew up in Chennai. There was a small school at that time called Christ King Convent, where we were up to the primary school, where the foundational values, both in terms of life values as well as I think English as a language for communication foundations were very strong in that place. And I'm grateful that that was an important learning period for us. And then subsequently it was a school nearby in a place called Tambaram in Chennai. Corley High School, where I did my schooling till grade 10. We were the first batch when grade 10 was introduced, as a school final was introduced in Tamil Nadu. And this was in 1978, I think. So and subsequent to that, because as I qualified earlier saying, being an average student, and you'll have to fight the system in getting your merit quota, if you like. So my dad decided you would be better off not taking up the first batch +2, because +2 was quite a tough one at that time, and with everybody was new. Even the teachers were new in the school in terms of how to pick up the syllabus and run with it. So he chose Polytechnic as a route for me, and I'm grateful for that decision also, for that help. I did my mechanical engineering in Polytechnic, and when I came to the Polytechnic, the reason I touched on language earlier, and I was in the kind of second list, if you like. The first list was over, and then you have this residual capacity. A little bit was what was not taken up by the first list. You get that. So when I got into the class, it was like A is the best class, and E or F would be the kind of in mark gradations. So it was pulled up like that, and but the communication ability within the classroom made me quite a, what do you call it, something that I started believing in myself, because people, the lecturers there were quite appreciative of my participation in the discussions, in their questions and answers, and they felt there was this person was somebody that need to be taken notice of. And that when that happens, and as I said earlier, when somebody else believes about you more than what you believe in yourself, then it sort of clicks in and inspiration sets in, and I was 1 in 10 among the whole A to F batch, and so I had a choice to pick up the engineering that I wanted. So those days, electronics and mechanical instrumentation, these were the campus doctrine. So I picked up that, and so I would say that that was the kind of educational background in terms of it. And it's a small family. My dad was in railways. He was in the central station in Chennai, and he was more in accounts. When he retired, it was about 10 years of work that he did in central station accounts. My mom was a school teacher for a long time, primary school teacher. It was a small family there.
Right. No, it's right what we say about education in India, although it's evolving very slowly and it's getting to where we actually want it to go. But it's sometimes very hard to digest the fact that, we are ourselves required to find the talent within us. Probably you're very late in the education system. But something I think we should, or rather is something which is evolving now, is to groom talent at a very young age, even whether it is pertaining to education or sports. But finally, I think we are getting there. I would imagine that leading a corporate from a small family that you came from to now leading a corporate of such a large extent, you have a big team to kind of lead. How do you manage that?
Well, earlier on you mentioned about being close enough and at the same time being far enough. So I don't know that our people need management. What they need is inspiration and demonstration of more by action, more by doing, them seeing us what they have done. So they don't really need much management. And you must have also heard that as a leader, your job is first to create more leaders, in the sense that so that's what has happened in that continent. And I may not have consciously set out and said I'm going to develop 100 leaders, but it happens by the way we deal with people, by the way they come up, and by the way we demonstrate appreciation about them, by the way we notice, and the way we encourage curiosity and asking them to make those decisions. Traditionally, we expect leaders to solve problems. Let's say imagine if teamwork means more problem solvers. If you can recruit and develop and have more problem solvers, and then perhaps you don't need it, and you can be far enough, like you said, in terms of giving them the room to be solving the situation challenges that they are facing. So teamwork, yes, absolutely, it's happening, and all the time we can't imagine anything beyond one person. There is teamwork that is required. So the moment you are more than one, you need team.
No, I think that you're absolutely right in suggesting and saying that, and I've had the first-hand experience of working with some of your colleagues. Right from whether it is Nandish Kulkarni in the past, Ravi Venugopal, and then Chandra Mohan and Pawan Shetty. The list goes on, and I'm sure there's plenty of leaders. Absolutely. And that is what I find, and then that's the beauty of that continent. I think leaders evolve out of leadership, and it's amazing to see a talent pool of leaders. And I'm sure you attribute every success to the team that works together, and then that's exactly what it is, right?
Yeah, without doubt. These are the people who come up, and you named a few, and there are a lot more of them, like you rightly said, and these are the people who make it happen because they believe in themselves, and we start noticing their work, and we give them the feedback that what they did very well, and then build up that good feel that we encourage that in any situation, that through feedback that's something that I found, that people rise to the occasion. They all start believing in themselves and make those decisions. And we would make some mistakes and we would learn from that, correct that. And when the next opportunity comes up for making decisions, and they don't shy away because they made some mistakes, or they definitely look up to the learning there and move on and make better decisions.
No, we all learn from our mistakes and grow. So well said, sir. And sir, it does not limit you from just working with your team. I mean, Datco Tenant is known to be hosting principals of companies from all over the world, and
Yeah.
some excellent brands that you carry under your flagship. And that must be another separate spectra of challenge by itself. Kind of, working with these international companies, bringing them, grooming them to understand the local needs and local challenges, and yet working together to make it successful. So, what has been that learning for you when it comes to working with international partners?
Very it's relationship building. That is, first is whether it is your people in the organization, or whether it's your customer or your principals who are kind of feeding you with the products and technology and availability, making it competitive enough and demonstrating the interest to be in the region, in the market. These people, if you understand what is in it for them, what is their, what's important for them, and make sure that that is heard, and also put your, and remain dependable, remain a reliable partner that they would look up to and say, I mean, even Middle East, I think in the old days had some, what do you call, people from the manufacturing side would look at it as a risk in terms of payment and the method of reaching them. So once you demonstrate that you are a dependable person, that you pay on time, you give them factual updates on feedback on the ground, and remain loyal to them through the trust that you develop between the parties. I mean, trust is another very, very it appears a simple word, and it's built over a period of time and different situations. And we've developed that trust in a way that they feel they are in the safe hands, and they would actually encourage us to go beyond UAE. And that's how also our ability to go and be present now in almost all the Gulf countries. And this comes through the relationships that our people have built. Each one of them, can bring in relationships for that. And for the customer, when they close their eyes and think about our company, they think only your face, the salesperson, the first person, that's the one that comes up. That's the company. Similarly, on the other side, for principals also, when they think about their distributor or agent, they think about these people whom they have come across. It's not a logo, it's not a corporate that they think of. So that's the relationship and trust that our people have managed to establish with these two.
I've experienced that firsthand, being one of your principals during my past working life, and I think you're absolutely spot on. It was those individuals who made the difference. Certainly, the brand and the logos, they all matter. They carry the required weight. But what really matters on ground are the people, the legs on the ground, as they call them, the soldiers, as we call them. So certainly, I think you paid your due respect to them by just evaluating in these kind words that you just projected, sir. One question which is very dear to me, especially when I thought about this interview and where you are presently dwelling, the Emirates, the United Arab Emirates, and Dubai in particular, an amazing city, a place of visions, a place which, it's the Mumbai of UAE somewhat, right? Makes people, breaks people, but yet delivers in the end. And it's certainly a place of visions. And UAE surely would have been a country providing, the platform for that co-tenant as well, in many ways. Because you did mention about expanding to the Gulf, but the nucleus where it all started was the Emirates. So how would you attribute the country's contribution to the success of the company, sir?
Yeah, I mean, without doubt, the country's development plans, the vision of the leaders at the country level, whether it's Dubai or Abu Dhabi, whole of the Emirates, you find their vision for development and making sure that this is a place where people would want to invest in. Therefore, infrastructure, the importance of infrastructure being realized very well, and a lot of funding that has gone into developing the infrastructure of the country, I would say was a key part of the development that happened here. So this is something that has helped us, because our strength has been in terms of product leaderships, that we had very, very strong product portfolio over a period of time. We developed that. And this is all around infrastructure, whether it was water, sewerage, irrigation, telecom, and even education as an infrastructure, if you like, in terms of the institutions that have come up here, both for higher education and as well as research and development institutions. These have been, and construction, of course. Maybe Dubai and the country is very well known for the various landmark projects that we have, like the Burj Khalifa, or, even the Dubai Mall, and so many projects. Now the Expo, and all of this as a combined one, the vision, the speed of decision making. I felt that's something that this country offered us to develop faster. Also, as an organization, I would say we found our niche in infrastructure. Right. And when we provide the right services and products, they were quite receptive, and there is no bureaucracy of anything that hinders business all the time. It's one that supports business, and I find that as an important part of our development reasons.
Yeah, no, it reminds me, it's kind of a flashback to the late 90s when I stepped into the UAE, and my first taxi drive on a Patan taxi to Abu Dhabi from Dubai. And we just passed by the, I think it was the, the building with the guitars. It was the rock, not the Rock Bottom. It was Hard Rock Cafe.
Hard Rock Cafe.
The Hard Rock Cafe was one of a milestone building at the end of Dubai, leading towards Abu Dhabi, and we thought that's the end. It was all desert after that. Give it a few years. I wouldn't say probably even 5 or 6 years. Things absolutely changed. I had to actually search for the Hard Rock Cafe every time I passed by that road. Such is the amazing development that the country has seen, especially in construction. Truly hats off to the leaders. And sir, I would like you to throw light on what would you consider as the highest point in your career?
One thing which definitely comes to my mind on as a highest point would be, you've heard of, I think I mentioned this name before, Ian Mack, who was our
ex-CEO.
And there were, this is when in that co-tenant, when mentioned that he's not a person that he takes credit for many things, he's somebody who is quite happy to give credit for other people as a true leader. So he said, this one thing, Naga, I want to take credit for is to making the decision to recruit you. And coming from a person of that role, and somebody whom I was a very dear friend of mine, he retired in 2019. So I considered that as it came much later. All the time, of course, he encouraged me a lot throughout my period. But that one statement I felt was a huge statement. It made me feel very uh, high about myself, and I felt good about it. That was I would consider. But going back the early stages in life in India, when I was in Western Crompton, again, the belief in the leader in 1986, I think it was. I was about 23 or something, and uh, I was nominated to travel for export promotion. I mean, in the 80s, traveling abroad to Europe, Australia, Far East, this was a big thing. For me, that was a great recognition. So it was also a large organization. So it was a huge buzzword that this guy who just had joined a few years ago is now having all the, and it was seen more as a perk rather than a role. For us, it was a role. For many people outside, it was so. It was. I mean, I felt elated at that time also. So that was also another high point in the early career, which obviously gave me a lot of exposure to international marketing and relationship building there.
Yeah, no, you kind of reminded us about Abdul Kalamji's incident as well. He narrates this story wherein his boss during one of the greatest missions credits a lot of the success of that particular project to the team when there was a success, but when there was a failure before that event, he owned that failure, but he gave the success to Abdul Kalamji and his team when the project took off. So such was something that you mentioned about Sir Ian,
yes,
whom I'm sure you hold very high in your personal life. So, Sir, we have talked about Dubai. We talked about the events that make Dubai what it is. One of the events that really stands out, and I know Datko Tennant is a shining star when it comes to this particular event, is the Big Five show. It's a huge show in terms of construction, water, whichever subsidiary industries we talk about. But you guys take that show pretty seriously.
Yeah, true. Big Five for us was, I think somewhere in 2019, they had their 40th year celebration, and we had our 40th year celebration too. So they came up and they said, "You've been there with us for a long time, and perhaps throughout the years that it was a once in 2 years, I think, and then it became an annual event subsequently." Yeah, for us, Big Five show was more. I would see it as an opportunity to look for new principles, and for new principles to look up to us. I mean, this is all besides the routine business of meeting customers, finding some people whom you have not met for a long time, or principals who come here and sit and spend time with us in the stall. But this, for us, Big Five was more of a statement of, here is an industrial distribution company who is part of a large group, reliable, and having multiple dimensions of industries that they work in, and will it fit me? For an aspiring principal, they would come up and wanting to find a relationship with us. And I also find many of these commercial attaches, like the trade officers these days, as they call it, they come up and also canvas for manufacturers from their countries, and they recommend, because they know our local presence, the size, the reputation that we have, the industries we cover. This has been one of a great image builder, I would say, for us. Big Five show. It has the right purpose. It's not a transactional business that the dollars that you sell there, but we do the foundation for that. So the relationship foundations are laid through that type of events for us. It's an important event in the Middle East, and it's very well attended all over, as you know. Anybody wanting to know something about what's happening in construction, make sure that they are visiting the show.
Yeah, I think UAE has been a birthplace for all these major events.
Yeah.
You talk about the ADIPEC in Abu Dhabi. You talk about the GTEX. So, such has been the country, a platform for launch of massive events and a role model for the rest of the Gulf countries.
So hotel, Gulf food, hotel show, these are all very big events that happen here.
Yes, but we are coming close to a very, very important event, the Dubai Expo. We still call it 2020, isn't it? And, wow, has the pandemic played its part?
Yeah. And then again, Dubai's resilience. Yeah, they're ready now. And I think yesterday it was saying we are ready for the world, was the caption in the newspapers here. And His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid was there to inspect the readiness of the place. And yeah, we're all excited. And again, we as a company that participated in a lot of in terms of there was one that I can quickly think of is the seating. Of course, the early stages a few years ago, the infrastructure, the water, sewerage, irrigation, landscaping, telecom, that kind of infrastructure, product supplies for those applications for the whole expo itself. And of late, low voltage systems like lighting control, intercom, public address, those type of systems that we have had in specific stalls within the expo. And seating was the latest one that we had. Certain one of the expo halls have our stadium type of seating that we offer. So very, very proud for that. We have been, as DATCO tenant, I'm sure the larger group DATCO has had several other contributions, but as DATCO tenant, our products are all part of expo. So very, very excited about the event next month. Yeah.
Fantastic, sir. As we're coming closer to the end of the show, I would like you to provide your thoughts, or rather, let's say, your advice to the youth. Something that is very important to this particular show that we host as frequently as we can. But one of the primary reasons we do this show, Mr. Nagarajan, is to inspire the young, and people like you is where they take a leaf out of. And I imagine that these conversations go a long way and remain etched in their lives. So what would be that advice that you would want to give to today's youth?
Important responsibility, and I congratulate you for making this effort, for being helpful for those aspiring children, whether it was the university or schools. For me, my advice would be for these people, self-discipline. Absolutely important. You just have to, it's a check on yourself that whatever I'm doing now, is it taking me towards where I want to be? So that action, you have to keep correcting yourself. And so self-discipline is introspection, obviously, is a process that you can follow. That what did I do today to move towards my aspiration? So that, because every discipline affects everything else. Each discipline, whether it's your eating discipline, your health discipline, your activity discipline, your studies discipline, whatever that you want to become, even if you're a sports personality, whatever you want to become, it's very important. Each habit affects the other. So be very, very careful what becomes your habit, and use self-discipline, use introspection as tools to get closer to where you want.
Fantastic. Well, Mr. Nagarajan, thank you so much for those very motivating words. And I'm sure there will be many who will be watching this show who will get that leaf that we were talking about and walk away with that with an advice of self-discipline, which I believe is one of the most important thing to kind of make any individual successful. Not just the youth, even at a later stage, it plays a very important role. But if you start early, one can imagine where that person would go. And I think to the audience, and especially you youth who are watching this interview today, please take that advice. I wouldn't say seriously, but take it as a life learner. self-discipline will take you places. And we have all learned it from experience. We've all learned it over years. Imagine if you pick it up at an early age, you guys have made a change in your life straight away. In fact, you have made your career right there. So with that, we conclude tonight's episode of Ground Zero Everyday Leaders. It was wonderful talking to you, Mr. C.V. Nagarajan, an inspiration for so many around. And, the quote I kind of would like to end with tonight is, effective leaders are made and not born, right? They learn from trials and errors and from experience. And I think that kind of summarizes your life, sir. You've been successful today, but I'm sure there are so many experiences that have contributed to where you stand. And the greatness of any individual such as yourself is you give back and you enjoy the fruits of what you give back. And thank you very much for empowering the world and being a contributor. Not just you, I'm sure it's, as you rightly said earlier during the conversation, your entire family, your wife in particular, also do just that. So congratulations from all of us at Ground Zero, Everyday Leaders, and the Leadership Studio Institute. So Mr. Nagarajan, it was wonderful talking to you tonight.
Thank you, Alan. Thank you for choosing me for this event, and I'm grateful for everybody who has helped me to become what I am. Definitely it's something that I enjoyed today, being here and sharing what I knew a little. Thank you for choosing me.
Thank you for making our evening beautiful. Thank you. God bless.
Bye. God bless.
And surely for me, this has been an evening of utmost learning, and an evening that I enjoyed spending with Mr. C.V. Nagarajan, the Deputy CEO of Datco Tenant, a client-centric, a customer-centric organization that has gone big in the Middle East. And I'm sure it is because of personalities and individuals such as Mr. CVN who bring in the value of teamwork, who bring in the principle of giving the best to your family, and yet being a professional to the core when it comes to serving the organization. It has been a memorable evening for me. I hope you all enjoyed it, and I request you to continue following, subscribing to our channel as our learning and our journey continues.